This is our third of three panels, and this one is on public discourse, how news, cinema, advertising gets out to the public and is shaped presumably to an audience which is at least 50% female, and on the other hand, shaped mainly by men. The panel consists of Mary Mills, Liza Johnson, and Christine Matthews, and is moderated by Kathleen Jamieson. Kathleen is a professor at the Annenberg School at University of Pennsylvania, co-author of 16 books, author and co-author of 16 books, mostly on political discourse and politics. She's also a founder of factcheck.org and more recently scicheck.org in 2015. And last night I got to learn what it's like to be an outsider at a George Wallace rally, which was fascinating. So I'll turn it over to Kathleen.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Welcome back. The premise of this panel is that the popular culture, including politics, shapes the way in which we see each other. And the talk in those environments and the visual images in those environments matter. We're privileged to have a panel today of people who are what I would call custodians of that culture. They understand it, they've worked within it, they felt the constraints of it, they are trying to break out of it, many times successfully. I'd like to frame our discussion by going back to the 1950s and situate us permanently there for about a minute and a half. In the 1950s, the scholarly community recognized that televised images over long periods of time can cultivate our view of reality, that we can come to see a world that is far different from the world we actually experience by experiencing the world of televised images. And that body of scholarship, produced largely at the Annenberg School at the University of Pennsylvania, said that, for example, when you're a very high consumer of television, you are far more likely to think that the world is crime-ridden than it is, and that your world is crime-ridden than it is. We replicated that finding that when you watch high amounts of local news, you think the same thing. In addition, you're far more likely to think that you're going to be a victim of a fire. Now, what that tells us is ongoing exposure to unquestioned assumptions can ultimately shape the way in which we think, and the way in which we speak, and potentially the ways in which we act. We also know from other research that these kinds of images can teach us how we should function in situations. And sometimes that can be negative. So, for example, you can normalize perception of smoking by having ongoing exposure of both young men and young women to people who are smoking in video contexts, a finding we just replicated on YouTube, when we found that when you look at an ongoing basis, seeing a lot of people, and that is normative in YouTube videos about smoking, a lot of young people smoking, often in their bedrooms, often with their friends, you are more likely to think that other people smoke, and your attitudes about smoking are, as a result, more likely to be positive. So if we say that something as basic as seeing other people doing things on an ongoing basis can shape something as potentially damaging as increasing likelihood of smoking, you're saying something which is profoundly disturbing. But we also know that images that you see in this kind of environment can help expand your world in positive ways. How many of us saw a different world when we saw Julia for the first time, if we are of a certain age? How many of us saw a different kind of relationship when we saw Will and Grace? How many of us looked at the Mary Tyler Moore Show and saw the struggles that some of our generation were experiencing as we were entering the workforce? Those kinds of portrayals expand our sense of the available options, and as we watch fictive characters dealing with them, either tell us what kinds of things work or don't work, what might be successful strategies or failed strategies. In the process, of course, it's possible to model a whole lot of dysfunction in interpersonal relationships, and as a result, we can ask the question, what does it do when people we care about and the people we are portrayed in these kinds of venues? I wrote a book in the mid-1990s, called Beyond the Double-Bind: Women in Leadership. It hypothesized that historically, women were placed in a situation in which no matter what they did, it was the wrong choice. And I called them double binds, and said that what we've essentially accomplished as women across time and as people who have been oppressed by others as a group across time is found ways to navigate out of those socially constructed binds, but we're still experiencing the residue of them. So very early, women were told, you literally can't go into the academy because women's brains can't work because their uteruses are functioning. And so if your uterus is functioning, your brain can't. The women who overcame that came out of the science curricula inside women's colleges, and they engaged in experiments which showed, for example, that a menstruating woman can add and subtract as well as a non-menstruating woman, that a pregnant woman can multiply as well as a non-pregnant woman, and interestingly enough, she can do it just as well as a man who is neither menstruating nor pregnant. That's what you call a control group. Now, what is the residue? The residue of that is Donald Trump suggesting that Megyn Kelly is menstruating when Megyn Kelly asks a question about which Donald Trump disapproves about the ways in which he's cast women. What it suggests is that something's going wrong hormonally, and as a result, her brain isn't functioning as well as it should, and, well, she's bleeding from wherever. And as Carly Fiorina notably said in another context, we all understood exactly what he was saying. We also had a double bind that I called silence shame. That is, women weren't allowed to move into the public sphere, and if they did, they were called whores. As a result, women's speech was substantially a speech that was not heard outside the limited sphere in which women were able to operate. Well, we ultimately overcame that historically. Many heroic women stood up. Men of goodwill stood up as well, and as a result, women moved into the public sphere. The residue of that silence shame, double bind, is one in which people say, Hillary Clinton is shouting. It's not appropriate to shout. When you pair that with a man engaging in exactly the same decibel level, no one says that man is shouting, they say that man is forceful. The residue of the double bind is still being overcome. The argument of the book was we overcome the residue by meta-communicating about it, making people conscious of it. That's part of what we're doing today as we move into all of the other ways in which individuals are marginalized by a society that needs help in reframing its understanding of itself and of others. We saw it as well with Hillary Clinton when Hillary Clinton pauses before she laughs when responding to a question that is unanticipated. It was described as a cackle by the New York Times. Rudy Giuliani, also a front-running candidate during that election, would pause before he would laugh in a way that seemed a little eccentric, and no one called it a cackle. We have a residue, historically, of the ways in which we've marginalized female speech in the form of a vocabulary to condemn women's discourse, and there's no comparable vocabulary to condemn or even to describe exactly the same kind of behavior when we find it in a male. Finally, there was a third bind. I actually looked at 5. I'm only going to praise C3, called Aging as Invisibility. Women were let into positions, marginalized out during the childbearing years, and then told that they were too old just as they were about to hit their professional stride. I call that aging invisibility. Aging invisibility is ultimately overcome as women move into leadership positions around the world, Margaret Thatcher, Indira Gandhi. Women move onto our Supreme Court, Sandra Day O'Connor taking a lead there. Women move into Secretary of State positions. And what's ultimately the residue that is still there? You have a conservative talk radio host who says, do we really want to watch Hillary Clinton get old in front of our eyes as she's president of the United States? My answer is, I'd like to see that. And with that, as a transition, it is my pleasure to introduce our first panelist. Mary Mills is the Worldwide Director of Strategic Intelligence. Now, labeling matters. Think about this label for just a moment. The Worldwide Director of Strategic Intelligence. Is that not a powerful label? My pleasure, Mary, to turn the panel over to you.
Thanks, Kathleen. Gender fluidity in advertising. I need to qualify that. It's actually more appropriately given this context. It should be entitled Toward Gender Fluidity in Advertising because it's a big claim and it's an optimistic one, and it's picking up right where Kathleen led us in terms of the positive influence that advertising can have, and that's what I want to talk to you about today. I'm going to show you some examples of advertising using men and women in respectful and disrespectful ways. Some of it is our own work from Saatchi and Saatchi, some of it is from other agencies, but I want to show you how it mirrors who we are and how we can use it for better good. First, a context. So 3 things I need you to understand about this. When we say language in my business, in the advertising game, it's words and pictures. I want to talk about that in a little more detail. I want to talk about how we can use advertising in a better way that you might not have anticipated. As one of my kids has on her bulletin board on her desk, a little poster that said, if you talk to people the way that advertising does, they would punch you in the face. So that's my home life. And my kids remind me constantly that advertising is an interruption. It's not warranted, it's not liked, it messes up our lives, and I am trying to also, my agenda here is to shift your perception of advertising, that in fact it can do some really decent things. So first and foremost, when we talk about language, it's words and pictures. Words are just part of the story, and I don't even want to put a number on whether it's half or a quarter or a third. It's two very different ways of communicating messaging, and just the way this is. One is art, and one says this is art. They do two very different jobs. We have two very different jobs within the agency as art director and writer, but they work together on everything. So even an art director and writer would work on a radio script. They would work on a print ad, whether or not there is any art direction involved. It's two ways of thinking of things, two ways of getting the idea right. Public discourse. How do I fit into this panel here in terms of how we affect views and beliefs in the public discourse? Broadly, historically, movies would be considered entertainment and escape. Speeches are about visions, common rhetoric, inspiring people to take action at a certain time. And ads are about us selling you stuff. So it seems like we're the poor cousin on all this. But what I want to talk to you about is, given the proliferation of advertising, the amount of money that's spent, the ubiquity of advertising, and the global sharing of advertising, it has a power that we're just starting to realize and tap into. Finally, one of the things that I think advertising can do is make it normal. Let me explain that a bit. For 100 years, we've been thinking about advertising as helping you buy products and services. The original example is sun-kissed oranges. There was a surplus of fruit, perishable product. California marketers said, can you help us? We don't know what to do with this. We're going to lose a fortune. Ad team came together and said, let's talk about orange juice for breakfast. Fast forward 100 years, orange juice for breakfast is a very common thing. Little did you know that that was an ad guy that got you into that. Same for bacon, same for coffee. A lot of the habits that we currently enjoy came from an advertising guy's idea of this might be appropriate. Now, nobody made you do that. It obviously fit the context of what people were interested in at the time, but we had a role in help shaping it. So 100 years later, we've come to realize, hey, if we can help people understand why it's important to drink orange juice, or why it's important to, save their money, or why it's important to have insurance or brush their teeth, why can't we help people understand how to view women, how to view men, how to treat each other more respectfully? Why can't we? It's a very powerful medium. So let's look at way back in the day. This was before I got into advertising in the 70s, when cigarette advertising, just as an example, early days targeted by gender. It was very clear. Men were in car ads, women were in soap ads, and one of the first examples of, well, here's a category where actually, hey, wait a minute, both men and women use it the same amount. Let's figure out how to do this. So Marlboro Man is one of the most iconic cigarette advertising campaigns in the world. I'm not condoning smoking cigarettes by any, just looking at this as an ad. Here's steely gaze, rugged jaw, rough guy, very cool. He smokes cigarettes. Let's do one for women. So they make the cigarette slimmer, and they have her semi-clothed, and they have her in a sassy position. Fast forward, whether or not this appealed to women who smoked or not, Marlboro is the only one that's still in existence. And most women I know who smoked at the time liked Marlboro because they thought it was cool. So even then, and it's too easy to say it was because men did the advertising or because clients wanted it that way. There are very strict ways in terms of, well, if we're going to do a women's version, this is what it should look like. So that's a theme I'm going to talk to you about as we go through. Role ricochet. What I mean by that is throughout these categories, as I show you some examples of advertising that are done for women or for men, or have women saying things that men used to say, or men saying things that used to say, I call that a ricochet. It was made up for this conference, so you can be proud to say, if it gets into be a meme, you can say you heard it here first, okay? It's a ricochet, and it influences each other, and when we do that, an effect happens, and it makes it better going back the other side. This is all, in a way, building the story of how we'll get to gender fluidity. So here's some categories of food advertising, probably the most conservative to the least conservative in terms of the categories we're going to talk about. Let's look at food. Special K is a resolutions ad that was in Canada 2008. Some of the ads I'm going to show you are a little bit dated, but they broke through and did an extraordinary thing. Watch this.
This year I will not freak out if I gain 2 pounds.
I will stop asking,
Do I look fat?
do I look fat? I will learn to appreciate my body.
I will not let my dress size
Determine my self-worth.
That's not that long ago, but that broke through. That was the first time we put in very burly, rugged men's mouths things that women say all the time. We were used to women talking about their bodies that way. When we showed women that, men saying it, they kind of went, oh yeah, sort of. Yeah, let's not do that so much. Very successful. It helped shape us. Stop saying stuff like that. Stop saying, I have my mother's thighs, I just have to live with it. You know, it's like men don't talk that way, why should we? I'm going to show you 2 chocolate commercials, one designed for women and one designed for men. I don't know why women have me time and men don't seem to use that expression. I don't know if it's a good thing or a bad thing, but this was an ad designed around that for Dove chocolate.
Dove Pure Silk Chocolate, now with the tantalizing crunch of almond. My moment, my Dove.
My time, very passive. Our data guys will tell you that somewhere along the line, someone did a study that said women would prefer to have chocolate than sex. So some bright one said, well, this is how they see chocolate then. It's all terribly sexy and terribly sensual and terribly lovely. Some women liked it, but not all. Look at this, and by contrast, this was done by our office in the UK. Do you know this one? With all due respect too to our data people, there is no amount of data that ever would have got you to that idea. Advertising has a distinct role in some of our creative enterprises that it can transform. The creative process can transform the world. I truly believe that. What happened here? Huge success for Cadbury. I actually got it back in the books, big time. Chocolate bars were kind of, health food. We didn't want to eat chocolate so much, whatever. Just a huge spike. But the more interesting thing is women liked it just as much as men. The problem we have is when we think in gender, we get into trouble. And when we listen to the superficial stories that we hear, well, they like it better than sex, so that's what's going to be that's way sexier. A gorilla on drums, nothing was ever said. He just played drums. When you see it in its full 90-second version, it's absolutely magnificent. Please look at it. But it was hugely successful, and women loved it. We need to learn to understand better what we share, not what makes us different. Oh, parenting. Parenting is, this is a very personal thing for me because I'm a parent, and some of the things that we do to ads to moms make me cringe. We just finished a global study of 8,000 moms around the world, and over half of them, so let's say between the ages of 15 and up, 70% of those women are mums. That's 2 billion mums in the world think that we have an outdated view of them. So do the math. Not only is it offensive, but look at how much money we're wasting. How dumb is that? Next year we're going to be doing men, and I swear we're going to get the same results. So there's something very wrong with the way that we're speaking to mums. Mums in particular. Women have some ways of being different and fun and exciting. You become a mom, you're one-dimensional. You're a caregiver. And the problem is every ad that we've put out has talked about mom as when you're busy moms, targets are busy moms, caring for your kids. It's too one-dimensional. And younger moms in particular are saying, that's not me. You're talking to my mom. You don't get me. Here's how they gave us a clue of how we could talk to them. So on the far, there's carer. And the green bar is how much I'd like to do that role more. And the white bar is how much I'd like to do it less. So when we reflect moms in ads, they say, could you reflect a little less on the carer and a little more on all the other roles that they would love to play. A safe house, a coach, a fan, a playmate, a rule breaker, a hero. Can't mom have some of the fun some of the time? This is an example of the kind of work that they object to. Look what mom does. Look what the dad, and the kid do.
Must be out of your mind. Beautiful man. Have red dairy milk and spoon.
So dad and daughter have this fabulous routine, a ritual. They do the candy, they do the dance, they do, what does mom? Unpacking the groceries. You know, can't she be the fun one? Can't she be the rule breaker? Can't she be eating candy before dinner sometimes? Of course she can.
Hi, I'm a dad mom. That means while my wife works, I'm at home being awesome.
Tide Boost is my Tide. What's yours?
A dad mom? This makes me insane. If a man is at home doing helpful parenting chores, he's a dad mom. So when I go to work, am I a mom dad? I'm so embarrassed. We did that. That was our New York office. We did that last year. Thankfully, we redeemed ourselves with this one.
May I help you with something?
Yes. I'm looking for the, they go on the, you know.
For the breast pump.
Huh?
First kid.
Come on, Bob, come on. Oh, hey, can you grab me a couple boxes of breast shields?
Second kid. Live, learn, and get loves.
You know, just a much more authentic story. Men object to advertising as well, as I said, and the biggest objection they have is stop making us look so stupid. You know, and anytime we're trying to do something like parenting, we look stupid. Well, he might have looked a little awkward, but it was because he was a first-time parent, not because he was a man. And the second time, nailed it, yet done. I mean, he's got a whole litany on hemorrhoid cream after that I cut for the gist of time. But that's a much better example of how we can show parents in our work. Alcoholic beverages. Now, isn't that just the way women like to drink their beer? And note, this is Canadian too, I'm so embarrassed. Note the shade of pink on the, we have pink beer, and we have chartreuse beer. That's not that long ago, 2012. What's the matter with you guys? If you ever sat down and had a conversation with a woman when she was drinking beer, you would know how silly that was. But again, Ben mentioned something earlier about focus groups. If you're in a situation, you ask them a question, they'll tell you the answer you're looking for. You have to be really careful how you ask the question and how you do it if you want the truth. This is just silly. I mean, that lasted about 2 weeks and it's gone, thankfully. Oh, again, I just take this so personally, because I like Scotch, and I was very proud of Diageo. They made, we do that. I was very proud of Diageo. They said we have a women's initiative. We've realized that women drink a lot of alcohol. More lately, Kathleen. And here we are, so they've expanded the repertoire to include women. So we have Jude Law having a Scotch moment, enjoying a moment of success, perhaps just finishing a film. And then we have women playing superhero. I mean, why? Why can't we have a successful moment that looks more appropriate and more relaxed and more like a Scotch moment? Understand when I drink Scotch. It's not when I put my cape on and do Wonder Woman. The redeeming feature for Diageo, and I'll give them this is important to me because you can't see that, it may be in the small type, but when Diageo first began the unisex brand project, there were no women on the board. Now 5 of its 11 directors are women. I'm happy about that. It's not easy, this game that we're in advertising. We don't always get it right. That's right, that's a good outcome. They'll get it better, I trust they will. Technology, you would think these leading edge guys, particularly Apple, would be, we're so forefront, we're so young, we'll know all this. Just last year, they could have had a really wonderful moment for women, but instead they launched a new phone that's pink. It's a nice phone, I can forgive them for that. The worst was their new app, though, that can adjust photography, and they demonstrated it on a woman, and they said, look what this does for resting bitch face. And they did the app that went, John, stop laughing so hard. So they showed this app that made her smile. So see, you can correct even a woman who doesn't smile. Stop telling us to smile and just let us be. I was disappointed in Apple. Fitness, more progressive, much more progressive. I have to introduce this idea here now because it's the adoption curve. If you talk in advertising about an idea that's before its time, innovators and early adopters, it will fail. It will not get into the mainstream. You won't get a tipping point. So movies can do this. Movies can be in the innovators and early adopters and get infiltrated into culture. We can't. We've got to cross the chasm and get into early adopters. I want to show you an example of ad from the early days that I think is really a shame. It was too soon.
If you let me play sports, I will like myself more. I'll have more self-confidence. If you let me play sports. If you let me play. If you let me play. I'll be 60% less likely to get breast cancer. I will suffer less depression. If you let me play sports. I will be more likely to leave a man who beats me. If you let me play. I'll be less likely to get pregnant before I want to. I will learn what it means to be strong. To be strong. If you let me play. Play sports. If you let me play sports.
That ad changed the trajectory of my career. When I saw that, I knew what I wanted to do in advertising wasn't just to sell toothpaste and life insurance and alcoholic beverages. I wanted to change the world. I loved it. And I was so excited. And it was 1995. And it just, I mean, there were facts, medical, scientific facts that proved why it's better to let women play sports. It was too soon. It was just too soon. So happily, Nike sort of picked up the pace, and now they're doing work for Under Armour and there are a number of other fitness brands. They're doing magnificent work. But it was just too soon. So that's why the timing for us is very important. Always like a girl. I think you're familiar with this.
Show
a
me
very
what it
simple
looks like
idea.
to run like a girl. My hair. Show me what it looks like to fight like a girl. Throw like a girl. Show me what it looks like to run like a girl. Throw like a girl. What does it mean to you when I say run like a girl?
It means run fast as you can.
Such a simple idea and such a wonderful, wonderful campaign. And you'll notice there's no product in there, but it did extraordinary things for P&G and for Always because people are wanting to know, what do you stand for? Why are you on this planet? It's not just to sell me stuff, but you better stand for something that's important to me. Brilliant job, absolutely brilliant job for them. UK, This Girl Can, some wonderful images. I don't swim because I hate my body, it's because I love my body. Really wonderful work around the world. Fashion, last but not least, fashion you can expect to be at the forefront because they really are the leading edge. They don't have to appeal to the mainstream, that grid that I showed you like the rest of our products do. They can be a little leading edge and then it trickles through. Look at this wonderful thing, I'm on it, thank you. That's Jaden Smith on the other side. I just love this ad, it's just delightful. He's wearing a skirt, happy as a clam. He looks fabulous, he looks really cool. He's not saying anything other than, I love wearing this. Whether gender is identity or gender is performance, this is an absolutely delightful way of looking at things and going, cool. And last but not least, this is an example to me of gender fluidity in advertising. It's from Asia. Sorry, Old Spice. I forgot. This is from another planet altogether. Old Spice did some work where they objectified men the way women used to be objectified in Budweiser ads, but they made it funny. They took the sting out of it. I still have some questions. If you had a woman put in the same position where they said, look at your girlfriend, now look at me, look at your girlfriend, now look at me, we would be very upset, but they did it with guys, and it was funny, and it took the sting out of it. Jury's still out on that one. Last but not least, look at this from Japan.
미츠메테 하지마리가怖いなんてそんなの当然だからねえほら見て難しいことなんて一つだってないでしょ見つめて待たせた時間だけ責任は重大なんだから気になるくせに目が合うたびに
のその視線
君のその視線
尻目に僕は冷静になってくと夢甘い誘惑には乗らないてかまずかったね弱せぶりなそんな仕草お静かな芸者いらない計算自分のまま弱かった無理しないでいいんじゃんね君は君のままが一番暇つぶしに逆さぎたよりも夢を磨く見つめてるのを君の方よく見てみな Yeah 仕掛けたのどっち You know what I mean こっち抜け出そうとしてももう遅い If you wanna play the game もうあなたははめられてる Yeah So you wanna play the game
Yes, I wanna play the game
If you wanna play the game もうあなたははめられてる Yeah So you wanna play the game 罠にかかったのはあなた
So many extraordinary metaphors in that. The tagline in the end there, given I think is a very powerful storyline, is makeup can make anybody look cute. But I love male, female, who cares? Just an absolutely delightful piece of work. What we want, listen, ask the right questions, but listen, I mean really listen. Get to know people. The way we do better work is to actually talk to them one-on-one. We call it exploring. We live with them. What's important to them? What do they care about? It's absolutely critical for us. We get all to the data at one point, but we've got to listen, and that means close-up one-on-one. Be authentic. Understand the experience. What is the Scotch drinking experience? What is the beer drinking experience? Don't just put a woman slapped on it and think, well, she might like this because she likes pink. I mean, that's so old. And finally, target the experience, not the gender. We are so over targeting gender, it's just not even appropriate, it doesn't work. And happily, the younger guys coming up, God bless our millennials, they want far more equality between men and women. So I think the future is kind of bright. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary. We're now going to transition to Christine Matthews. And again, I want you to take a look at the title, President. The reason I'm featuring titles is 30 years ago, you would not have been able to find many women who could carry these kinds of titles, and who then did work commensurate with the title to help change the way in which we view the world. It's my pleasure to introduce Christine Matthews, President of Bellweather Research.
Thank you. This has been an amazing event. I've learned so much. Last night, I was at the wonderful comedy event, Laugh So Loud, LOL, or Lots of Love. And I was mostly just happy that I knew the hip words that Aparna put up there, especially Netflix and chill, because I have a high school daughter, and it's good to know the code. So anyway, last night I got back to my hotel room a little bit late. I tuned in to the Republican debate. So I had missed the discussion about the size of Donald Trump's man parts. For the most part, except for probably when John Kasich was talking, I had to put it on mute and just kind of follow along on Twitter because I just couldn't. I just couldn't. But I find that it's pretty rich that Donald Trump, when asked about, Hillary Clinton being late to the debate stage because she had to take a bathroom break, he found that so disgusting that he couldn't even talk about it. Yet he was gifting us with the sharing, details about his endowments. So if Donald Trump hadn't brought the ridiculous train wreck that he has brought to the Republican primary election, I think we'd be talking about the role language and gender in politics as something that has become a little bit less overt, but is still persistent and pernicious. But nothing about Donald Trump and what he says is subtle. So I will include some of his charming comments as I look at the language surrounding women candidates, women office holders. First, let's just take a look at the lay of the land. This is something I know intuitively, but not everybody in the room may know, which is women are obviously very underrepresented. They're 19% of Congress, roughly 25% statewide office holders are in the state legislature, yet they are 53% of all voters. There are particularly few Republican women in Congress, so you can see, and this data comes from the Center for American Women in Politics out of Rutgers, which is a wonderful, valuable source of information on all this kind of information. So we've got 62 Democratic women in the House, 22 Republican women, 14 Democratic women U.S. senators, and 6 Republican women. So there's lots of reasons, including the pipeline, funding for the lack of Republican women. One of the other reasons is they just have a really difficult time getting out of primaries. And they're about 20 points less likely to get out of their primary than a Democratic woman is to get out of her primary. One thing is true, Republican primary electorates are majority male. Democratic primary electorates tend to be majority female. That may have one thing to do with it. But in 2012, for example, 57% of Republican women lost their primaries compared to 38% of Democratic women. In 2014, it was slightly better, but Republican women, again, were 20 points less likely to come out of their primaries. So, we're getting clogged up there. There are many reasons for this lack of political parity. One thing that we're obviously examining today is how language plays a role in it. So one thing I want to talk about is what's in a name. And thinking back to 2008, both Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama were U.S. senators when they ran for president. But a study found that Senator Clinton was 4 times as likely to be called by her first name than was Senator Obama. So that her title was dropped, and she was just referred to as Hillary or Hillary Clinton. Male anchors, male reporters were more likely than female anchors or female broadcasters to drop her title. So I really like that Kathleen emphasized the title, because what happens is, titles infer status, they infer power, and for women candidates, that title gets dropped. And one thing, I've done a lot of focus groups, a lot of research. One thing that I learned from doing focus group with swing women, and we talked about, we were imagining a kind of a different scenario, but a debate where you had Hillary Clinton as a Democratic nominee and the Republican nominee. And we asked, what would be the best way to refer to Hillary Clinton? What if somebody called her Hillary? And the women didn't like it at all. They felt absolutely she should be referred to as Secretary Clinton. And I haven't watched the Democratic debates, I've seen clips. I think that's how Bernie Sanders refers to her, as Secretary Clinton. So he's probably either that's second nature, or he's also seen some data that says this is really what you need to do. Back in 2014, we were involved in pretty much every U.S. Senate race where there was a woman candidate, either on the Republican side or the Democratic side. So in North Carolina, Speaker of the House Tom Tillis was running against the incumbent U.S. Senator Kay Hagan. And in a debate, she referred to him as Speaker Tillis. He called her Kay. And there was a big backlash. And, his point was, I would prefer that you call me Tom. If you were Bob Hagan, I would have called you Bob. But it was just unseemly, and there was a backlash. And seen as disrespectful that he called her Kay. And you can see, again, candidates may brand themselves using their first name. Carly for president, Jeb, 2016. But that's something you have to do. Particularly if you're a man running against a woman, you should never refer to her by her first name. You should always include the title. This is a really interesting study, speaking of titles and associations, a new study out of Vanderbilt, done by an assistant professor of political science there. And this was done in Florida. They had a random sample of respondents, and they showed these images of men and women in professional attire. And what happened was the men, the words most associated with the men were president and executive. And for the women, it was assistant or aide. And she found that regardless of she had done some pre-screening questions about likelihood to vote for a woman candidate. Even among those who said, yeah, I'm very open, absolutely ready and likely to vote for a woman candidate, if they were unable, if they were more likely to associate words like assistant or aide to the woman rather than the man, it had an impact on their vote behavior. So this is a form of hidden bias. I've had women members of Congress tell me they've had instances where they've gotten into the member elevator and they've been told to get out because they're staff, or they've been on the floor, of Congress and have been instructed to leave because staff's not allowed. So there's a lot of hidden bias, and I think it's important, to recognize that. So, of course, we have to have some Donald Trumpisms. This is actually rather mild compared to many of the things Donald Trump says, but clearly he really cannot handle smart women. And so this was a tweet. He loves to be on the Twitters, and he said, I just realized that if you listen to Carly Fiorina for more than 10 minutes straight, you develop a massive headache. She has zero chance. So what he's saying is her voice is irritating, it's grating. He said the exact same thing about Hillary Clinton's voice, that it gave him a headache. She's so theatrical, and her voice just gives me a headache. So the one thing Donald Trump did tell the New York Times that he wouldn't say about Carly Fiorina is he did say he would not call her honey. So there, you got that. And so, this is one of those things where, women's voices are discussed. They become something that is other. And the journalist Bob Woodward, for example, criticized Hillary Clinton for shouting too much. He said there's something very unrelaxed about the way she communicates, and that she's not doing better because she shouts too much. And I think, again, Kathleen, I think you addressed that. In fact, I'll have a couple of points that you addressed, that, a woman has a very narrow bandwidth, in which you are able to talk and project. And if you think about it, you're at a gigantic rally, you're going to have to raise your voice, right, as opposed to speaking to a small group of people. But again, so women are criticized for their voices. They give people headaches, or they're too screechy, or they're too loud. And this was the iconic moment. This really was. And Kathleen again referred to it. I think this was Carly Fiorina's best moment of the campaign. So she was asked about Donald Trump in Rolling Stone, who said, look at that face. Would anybody vote for that? Can you imagine that? The face of our next president. And so he tried to pretend that he was meaning like her. I don't even know how you can pretend that what you could possibly mean by that. But he was trying to pretend it was her persona. So Jake Tapper asked, Ms. Fiorina, how do you feel about that? And she said, I think women all over this country heard very clearly what Mr. Trump said. And then she dropped the mic, because it was great. And it was really the only time I have ever seen shame or embarrassment on Donald Trump's face. Really, he did blush a little. And then he stammered, oh, I think she has a beautiful face, because he just can't, he doesn't even know what to say. So that gets to the attractiveness predicament. And I think Kathleen has obviously written books. It's, the double bind, but the attractiveness predicament's a really big issue. So we did a ton of focus groups, a ton of research around the U.S. Senate races in 2014. And as I said, we were involved in almost every one that had a woman candidate on either side of the aisle. So in this case, this is really unfortunate. And we were kind of horrified. Party spokesperson called the U.S. Senate candidate from Kentucky an empty dress who babbles incoherently. So can you ever imagine it being said about a man that he babbles incoherently? That's just, no. What's interesting, though, is appearance is not only a point of discussion, observation, criticism for men of women candidates. Women also criticize other women based on appearance. It has to do with relatability. In Georgia, for example, I did focus groups, and you may recall that Michelle Nunn was a candidate for U.S. Senate. And I don't know, she's smart, accomplished, seems like a wonderful person. Some of the comments in the focus groups, though, were, she looks like, and you guys will find this ironic, a liberal college professor from the Northeast. So what they were saying is she's not relatable to us here in Georgia. I can't relate to her. She's other. She's different. I don't know. In Louisiana, we were doing focus groups, and one of the participants, who I did not enjoy at all, said about the incumbent U.S. Senator, wow, she's really gotten old and fat. And he, of course, was old and fat, but never mind. And he just said it like it was some kind of great indictment and great insight on his part. So that was just really annoying. So this is, again, so there's how we look, there's how we talk, oh, and how we laugh. So we are supposed to smile, but we're not supposed to laugh too big or too loud. This was a comment on social media. Hillary's cackle alone is enough to keep her off the world stage. So cackle is something a witch does, right? And a witch rhymes with, right? And can you imagine a US president who cackles? No, I think that is actually one of the most damaging words, cackle. And I found it, I did a little Google search, lots of YouTube videos, mix-ups of Hillary Clinton's cackle. And I think that's actually very damaging. So then, of course, women have to be smart, but they also have to be likable. So, you know, they have to be smart, they have to be competent, they have to be not to this, not to that. And this is as important to women as it is to men. So this is a quote from somebody who had a big donor who had given to Barack Obama. It's not that I don't think she's competent. This is about Hillary Clinton. She's competent. She's just hard to like. So this is somebody who's saying why he's withholding making a donation to Hillary Clinton when he supported Barack Obama in 2008 and 2012. She's just not likable. And this is about Carly Fiorina, and this is a woman saying it, actually. And the thing about Carly Fiorina is I really think she overperformed in the debates. Her command of facts and her ability to talk policy, I think, was really impressive. So then she was criticized for not smiling enough. So she had to really work on relatability. And this is a woman saying there's a hardness in how she speaks and carries herself. Social media can be brutal. This is not, the words are okay, but look at this image of Carly Fiorina as a little girl in pink running a company. And the Democratic National Committee did this. On social media, it can be very brutal. Hashtag, words that don't describe Hillary. An analysis of 12,000 tweets was done by 2 PhD students. 1 in 12 comments was about her appearance, for men in a sexual way, and for women about likability and relatability. Traditional media isn't perfect either. A reporter told me that the original headline read, Gloria Steinem and Madeleine Albright scold young women backing Bernie Sanders. They got a little backlash. They changed it to rebuke. Now, scold is a word. You may be familiar with the Women's Media Center. They have something called Name It, Change It, and they had a glossary of words that they recommended the media not use because they were sexist. Scold was one of them. I don't know if you've heard of the Hillary Rodham Clinton super volunteers. These are words that they have decided are sexist surrounding Hillary Clinton. I think this goes a little too far. I think it's a good point of discussion. I think out of, well, it says out of touch, but out of touch represents the past. I don't see that as overly sexist, but they do, and they say they're watching. Finally, just to wrap up, I have done some work with this great project. It's a collaboration, a nonpartisan project of the Center for American Women in Politics and the Barbara Lee Family Foundation to track, analyze, illuminate gender dynamics in the 26th presidential election. So not that they'll have anything to do, but you can find them on Facebook and on Twitter under Gender Watch 2016, and I highly recommend them. They've written some interesting things. I've done some things with them, and they're calling it out, which is fascinating. So,
thank you. Mary, they've spent billions of dollars. These are incredibly talented people. They have all the research in the world. They charge their clients a whole lot of money. Why did it take them so long to get any of this right?
It's hard, first and foremost. It's too easy to to either blame our clients or blame that most of the writers and actors in the early days were men. It comes back to the point of listening. I am not the woman that we target more often than not. All my assumptions and biases, when I walk into work and I write a brief or I train a group or I teach them, I have to put them in check. It's really hard to do. Most clients look at the work that we do and go, yeah, my wife would love that. That's a great ad. Stop that behavior. It's such ingrained human behavior. But if we listen, if we ask the right questions and truly, truly engage the audience with whom we'd like to communicate, magic happens. It's just obviously we don't do it often enough. It's too bad. Actually, in North America, we're not great at it. We're better at it in the UK. We're better at it in Asia. Intuitively, they seem to understand. I mean, those are the guys that did the gorilla. They understand guys. They didn't have to do focus groups for it. But we're getting better. But yeah, it's shocking. I think now that we have data to show how much money is wasted, they may pay attention to that.
Please tell us who you are and frame your question.
Hi, my name is Globiana. I'm a writer. It's interesting to me now that you're talking about what's not said. I wrote down a whole list of words that I've heard in conjunction with images that I see in news, either in print or with the voiceover. It doesn't really matter. And so I see pictures of large groups of people, insurrectionists they're called, peacekeepers, demonstrators, Sunnis, climate change experts, rebels, world leaders, pirates, Iraqis, and it goes on. When I look at the picture, phenotypically what I see is men. That's the one word that I never hear, is they're not called men. When women are involved, oh yes, well, remember Arab Spring? There were women, and boy, did they make a point of that. Of course, the Democratic primaries, we have that. We have the LPGA. We have a lot of things.
And to whom would you like to phrase the question?
The question is, I don't care, it's just that it scares me, and I want to know if you people have any sense of what's going on, and you know, why is this happening, I guess? It scares me.
Do you see it as happening, and if so, why?
Good question.
Just on the whole pronoun thing, what is the it that is said to be happening, perhaps? Maybe happening?
I'm not sure.
Leaving out the word men, refusing to say the word men when what we see is men.
I don't know if this really addresses your question, but as a person who does a job, who is also a woman, every time I am in public, people say, oh, what's it like to be a woman director? And I often think what it would be like. I even have a plan that I would like to do this with some of my male colleagues sometime, that we can all do press together so that they can ask those guys, so how is it being a man director? Do you know? And I do think that the elision of the unmarked terms of masculinity is systematically present because of the patriarchy, and I think that is true, and that we just have to continue working against that by both marking all these invisible terms of dominance, like masculinity and whiteness, whenever we can, and just do that together as collectively and systematically as possible.
Thank you. Next question. Please tell us who you are and frame your question.
Hi, my name is Sally. I'm a student at Bridgewater State University, and I'm doing a project on discrimination against female producers. And my question is to Liza Johnson. What are your thoughts on discrimination against female directors in major film industries? And what advice would you give to upcoming female producers or aspiring female producers?
And can I ask you, are you asking me to make a distinction between directors and producers, or are you speaking more collectively about women who do executive upper-level jobs in filmmaking?
I'm gonna say females who are in film studios.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I think there's interesting new data that I would like to know more about. Other people here might know more than I do, but I think the data has been very clear that hiring practices in film companies, studios, and independent projects are systematically not weighted in favor of women or people of color. And I think that's kind of just proven by the data. So my opinion about it is not that important. When it is encountered, I think it is mostly unconscious, which doesn't make it unsystematic, right? But I've never had an experience where there's like a Lex Luthor figure being like, I don't know, little lady, I don't think you can do this. Do you know it? So like in the absence of a kind of evil villain character implementing racist and sexist practices, it doesn't mean that they don't exist. They clearly do. And I think that I don't really know what to do about it besides all of us just keep working as hard as we can and maybe take an interest in the work that's being done by the EEOC and by the ACLU.
Same question for Christine and Mary in their own fields.
So what would be the corollary in my field? A discrimination against women candidates or women practitioners?
Women consultants who manage campaigns and do polling.
Yeah,
run firms.
We've talked about this. It's still kind of an old boys network, and one of my companies is called Burning Glass Consulting, and I have 2 female partners. We have only female employees, and the idea is that in an all-female firm, different things are seen, different perspectives are given, and too often there's not a woman at the table. And what men think is, for example, this happens not only in advertising but in political campaigns. So if you've got a bunch of male consultants around the table, and they're imagining how do we reach women voters, so they put them in the kitchen. And this happens on both sides of the aisle. This is something we tested in some panel research that I did. And women, so the idea from the men is, the women are going to sit around the table in the kitchen and they're going to talk about the political candidate. And every woman just really reacted strongly, like, really? That's how they're imagining us, right? In the kitchen. And that's the kind of thing that happens when there aren't women at the table. And, it's still kind of tough. You still have to, I don't know that I can say, I've seen so much overt discrimination. I think it's, maybe we're just not thought of to be included or brought to the table. But the other thing that happens, honestly, is when you have a family and you have kids, it becomes difficult with all the demands that are made. And so a lot of women, I think, opt out at a certain point, and sort of singularly focused, not very balanced men continue.
Mary?
So. I guess the advice I would give you, is it there? Yes, it is, but you need to be resilient, you need to be thick-skinned, and yes, we do work harder than our male counterparts, and that's still there. I wouldn't trade it. I still love the career that I've had, and I'm still enjoying it. I'm surprised I'm still there. I've been there 30 plus years. Yeah, you can do it, but it's not easy. Find a mentor, someone who knows what they're doing, they'll pull you through. There are a lot more female mentors now than there were before. I had a male mentor. Don't give up.
Next question. Please frame it to a specific individual on the panel.
Sure. Good afternoon. My name is Risa Mednick. I actually come from the world of social justice practitioners. I had Transition House, which is Cambridge's domestic violence agency. I come here actually to figure out where my work sits between research and social justice and other kinds of corporate information and popular culture. And my question is informed by something that Mary said in her discussion, which was informing her colleagues to talk at the experience, not the gender. But what about when the experience is gender?
Interesting. I have to say I wouldn't have experience, because we market stuff, we market products. So I haven't had experience with marketing gender on its own. There's always a link to a product, a service, an idea. I guess the closest thing I would have is maybe our campaign for violence against women, when we had to speak out about that. And it still was, what's the experience of the victim? And we've had male victims who are subject of domestic violence as well as women. Understand the experience from their point of view. How do they want to be portrayed in this? Never mind if we had an idea that would make more money or get more people aware. If it disrespects them or if it makes them feel shamed or humiliated, it's not worth it. So I'd still go back to understand that core story of the individual that we're trying to either talk about or portray, or what the experience is of being a victim. So whether it's a Scotch drinker, et cetera, the process is the same. But I haven't had that much experience with it, unfortunately, not yet.
And with apologies to those who will have unanswered questions, this will have to be the last question.
Hi, I'm Kit, and coincidentally, I also work at another local domestic violence services agency, Casamirna, which works with Transition House. And I'm actually in development and communications, but my question's not really about that. It's a much more general question for Christine, specifically, but I think anyone might be able to speak to it, which is, as a young woman, one of my big pet peeves is hearing a lot about these terrible ways that young women talk, like upspeak or vocal fry, and so on. And the interesting thing about that is that I'm getting that not only from people who are clearly speaking in bad faith, but also older female relatives who very much would describe themselves as feminists and think that women my age need to change the way we present ourselves or talk in order to be taken seriously, and that we're disadvantaging ourselves if we don't. So my question is about how do you navigate the sense that you should be listened to no matter what, because what you have to say is important and you shouldn't be looked down upon for being a woman, with the pragmatic need to present yourself in certain ways in order to be more effective. And this is both something that we face as women in professional life, as normal people, and also candidates face, I'm sure.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Christine.
Let me just ask a question. As a young woman, has anybody ever said, and I'm not detecting this with you at all, that you have upspeak or vocal fry or anything like that? Has that been said to you personally?
Yes, yeah.
What was your view of that? For example, did it feel like something constructive and it's good to know, or did it feel like criticism and there's nothing you could do about it? Because I'm asking this for a reason, because I have noticed with younger women the upspeak. I haven't noticed vocal fry. This is something new to me that I've heard just here, but I have definitely noticed the upspeak, and I have actually wondered about saying something as a mentor or a colleague, because I feel like not only do older women notice it and maybe don't take it seriously, but particularly men, particularly upspeak. And I'm just curious to know what's the most constructive way if somebody like me, for example, should notice that. What do you think?
So I think this is hard to answer because the context in which it was said to me actually was by my mother when I had having casual conversations with her, and of course we all code switch in the way we talk in different circumstances, and at work I talk differently than I talk to my mom or my friends. And I'll probably use more upspeaking vocal fry in more casual contexts. Not on purpose, but that's just what happens. So I think that if you're asked to give feedback on the way someone talks or present themselves, it's always useful, and also if it's couched in terms of there's something inherently wrong with this way of speaking, but people are jerks and they're going to judge you, and this is the way you navigate within those oppressive systems. I don't know if that's overly harsh, but I always found it's really frustrating when people are judged for the style of their speech rather than the content, and it happens more to oppressed people.
I think of so many comments that were made to me as a young woman, both from men and women, particularly men. And I remember, for example, going to one meeting with my male boss, and I was, I had a title. I was a research person, and I had just a pad of paper ready to. He was like, "Don't come in with a pad of paper. You're going to look like a secretary." And I was like, "What am I supposed to do? I need to write stuff down." And it was like it never occurred to me that coming in with a pad of paper, people would perceive me as the quote-unquote the secretary. But so he told me that, and then I started to think, well, maybe I should go out and buy one of those like leather binder things and put my paper in it so I look like I have a portfolio. Would that be helpful? So I know, I've been in that situation where older people had said things to me as a young woman too, and on some level, it was nice to go, oh, this is how this is perceived, weird. But, okay, either I'm going to play along or I'm not. And it's just now that I'm on the other end and an older person, it's helpful to know, what are constructive ways, if any, to point that out.
Please join me in thanking our distinguished panel.
Okay, well, thank you so much. Wow. This was like a dream for me. I mean, all these panels of knowledgeable people, you know, basically I was given license to want to learn about this topic, and we were able to pick these very thoughtful panelists, and I can't begin to express my gratitude towards them. I should let you know that we have online viewers in the US from Boston to Seattle, from New York to Austin, Texas. Internationally, we have people viewing online from Medellin, Colombia, Ankara, Turkey, Toronto, Canada, Poland, Bulgaria, France, and the UK. So that's rather phenomenal. I'd like to thank the people that put their shoulders to the wheel. I think that's the right metaphor. Allison Franklin, Jessica Vicklin, Maura Madden, Paul Barron, and in particular Becky Wasserman, who I just can't believe how much she did to make this happen, and I'm incredibly grateful to her. So to summarize, I don't think I can really put it all into thoughts. So what I'm going to do is just use some of the quotes that were memorable that I wrote down, and hopefully won't take up too much time, but these were quotes that came out of people's mouths, both in the comedy session and today. And there were just things that I flagged that seemed to, in a sense, encapsulate the conference. So from last night, women are fed so many contradictory messages that all you can do is be a robot. Tragedy plus time equals comedy. Language reifies binary. This is sufficient grounds for change. Reality is constructed with language. Women have natural power. Matrilineal tribes are more accepting of third and fourth genders than patriarchal tribes. There is no trans equivalent of the Académie Française in regard to language change. It's too important to rush. Be shamelessly flexible with your language. If I am passing, someone else is failing. When we center the marginalized, we become liberated. Get closer to a multi-layered self. Echoing another thought. Women are faced with impossible images in media. Allow yourself to embrace uncertainty. An opinion is the short skirt of the internet. I like that one. The rise of the word misandry in social media. Communication is incredibly contextual. From a questioner, if I get policed by men, I get policed by men, but secretly supported by women. Women, no matter what they do, it's the wrong choice. If your uterus is functioning, your brain can't, ironically. The term role ricochet, which was made up for this conference, thanks, Mary, it is way sexier. That is way sexier. A gorilla playing on drums. Again, context is everything. A dad man, this makes me insane. So when I go to work, does this make me a mom dad? And the one that Mary had to tell me to shut up, look at what this does for resting bitch face. In terms of run like a girl, it means run as fast as you can. She's not doing better because she shouts too much. We're not allowed to laugh too big or too loud. And I guess I'll end with this one. Are we capable of saying what we really mean? Sounds like a good one to end it on. So thank you so much for attending. You've been a great audience, and I think it's been a great set of panels, and I've learned an amazing amount. So I'm just grateful for all. Thank you.